Hello and welcome to episode number 387 of the Armin Show podcast of science, people, creativity, learning more. Subscribe, YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever it might be. There are many sources for the content that's informational, informative, can be entertaining at times. We want to grow as people. It's nice to improve and connect with others who have knowledge in their bases, and the linking is wonderful. Networking mindset. On this one here, we have a guest. She has been on the show before, returning back onto the Armin Show, Rebecca Faith Lawson in the building. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Hey Armin, thank you. Excited to be on your show
Glad to have you on.
again.
This is super duper. Time 3, fabuloso. We support such, and there's something nice about when there is a good linkage of sorts. Now, for feedback purposes, I am in California, rain season out here. You're currently where, and how's the weather?
I'm in Sarasota, Florida. I'm actually at the USF Sarasota Manatee campus, and it's bright and beautiful out right now. So,
tell us a tidbit about the USF campus. What comes to mind when you think of it? Anything specific that comes to mind when you imagine a campus?
The most current, they're actually going through a change right now. So, Sarasota Manatee campus, they are adding dorms to their location. So in the future, kids will be able to come to campus, but also stay on campus, which will be really nice for them. So they just had like the ground. What do you call that? Like a groundbreaking for it, and where they do like the first shovel. I have no idea.
Right.
But
that first shovel picture is always popular in the news articles.
Yeah. So yeah, they're starting to build that.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. I don't throw this in much, but when I was at UC Santa Barbara, it was cool because they had the campus, then they had on the campus, similar to what you're describing. Then they had the city next to it, Isla Vista, that had a bunch of apartments and such. And those things make up the community. Without all those parts, you would just have, if it was just a school and no dorms, no apartments, you would just have people coming in, no community, and then they would depart. There's not something nice about the community.
Right. Like, so right now it's just like a commuter campus. Like everybody just commutes here and people leave. So, I mean, adding these dorms for students, it's just going to change the whole dynamic at this campus. So
that's pretty cool. It's a fully commuter campus right now.
It'll be a positive for people, I think.
Yeah. That's cool. Community building is key. That's actually kind of one of the themes for our discussion today, which is cool. Community building. Now, actually, that's a great segue. Long-lived segues that match up fittingly. Community. One of the strongest communities we can have as people is our fellow people, our family structure, family unit. The nuclear family was popularized in the 20th century, and it was described as this is going to be the base for all people. There'll be some parents, there'll be some children, they'll stick together, grandparents can assist. It was very valuable, and it was showcased. In 2023, where we are currently, it's not showcased as heavily. It is left out. A lot of discussions speak to the exception of that versus the actual qualities of that. When you think of the family unit, what comes to mind as far as, is it valuable? Is it worthwhile to have this cohesive unit? Or was that just a presentational thing and everybody can just do fine on their own?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing that pops into my head is kind of just how we think as people. So having some sort of structure and some sort of organization, I think, helps people function in general better and more efficiently. And so I think that's probably part of maybe that mindset, if they were calling that like the nuclear family. And I'm sure there's a lot of history around that. But I mean, it also like goes back to like biblical times and the whole idea of like a man and a woman coming together, marrying. So I think like there's that religious or like Christian standpoint of like what a family should look like. But then if you aren't religious, then still just even the whole dynamic of having people who are together and stay together for a long term gives everybody like a sense of like stability, like a stable community, and something that they can like just it's grounding for a lot of people to have consistency in their life. So
This is true. It's good for the home base. It also makes me think of creativity. When you want to be creative, you need to have like a room or a bubble of your own to go and make things. Until you have that spot, you don't come up with great ideas because now you're worried about this thing happening or that. But once you have a spot, now, okay, things are stable. Now I can focus on my thoughts. And the same thing with the family unit, like you're describing. Until it's a stable base, how are you going to start to plan for something later on? Because you're always like worried about today repeatedly.
Right. And like, especially like I even think of kids and how they form those secure attachments with like their caregiver. And so if they feel that they have security and like they have a good like emotional bond with their mom and dad, then they're able to play pretty freely and they don't worry. Like they don't have all this anxiety because they just feel so secure with their caregiver. And so I think that probably, I think you see that a lot even through life, just in different situations. And like when you do have that sense of security, whatever it is, you can like, it helps you, like, it frees your mind up to explore other things. So
Suddenly you're at peace. You're at peace at that moment,
a sense of peace.
which is cool. It's like handed to you as a gift at that point. Let me throw out some statistics here in relation to this, because the nuclear family has changed in recent times. The Census Bureau's count showed that 17.8% of the United States, 130 million households, had children under the age of 18 and married parents. This was, I believe, 2 years ago, but it had dropped from over 40% in 1970. The number is low, the fewest since 1959, and there are reasons for it. They're included with the decline in birth rate, which has been dropping as well. So this has shifted quite drastically in half a century here versus in some other nations such as Italy that I had looked at, where the family unit is much more connected. Does this lead to turmoil? Can this be cause of turmoil in our local nation in upcoming times when there's not so much of a strong base to pull from?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and I just like think about maybe why our society in America looks the way it does compared to an Italian society. Where does that really, like, where are the roots of that? And I think of like the Declaration of Independence and just the different like concepts of like government and how that's really influenced our thinking. And it is kind of all about like your individual rights and like a sense of freedom and like the pursuit of happiness. And so those values naturally, since that's like our part of our government, have influenced American people a lot. And we're able to we've been like led in that direction to think kind of for ourselves, and okay, we can take in a way like take responsibility of our finances and kind of do our own thing in life. And also another I think influence of that is like again kind of this like religious mentality, like not, I don't like the word religious because that can have bad connotations, but I guess like biblical roots in the sense of Protestant thinking, whereas like for instance like Protestant thinking came out of first there was Catholicism, and then they thought that Catholics think that you, maybe not all Catholics, but the origins believed that you would have to go to the Pope to be in connection with God. But the Protestants came out of Catholicism because they believed that you did not have to go through the Pope to get connection with God, but you could go straight to the Bible and you could be in connection with God without a Pope. And so basically, that like leads to personal responsibility. It's like, oh, like Protestant thinking, you have like a sense of responsibility, and your maybe your connection to God is between you and God. And so that's also like kind of individualistic thinking. It's not like you have to be part of like the Catholic Church or part of the Pope. You don't have to be part of this group necessarily to to function successfully or in a spiritual manner, but you're more, it's another way to think individually, and you're accountable for your thoughts and your beliefs and actions and everything. And so that also has influenced America, because I think probably, just, yeah, those ideas. And then when you look at countries like maybe Italy, I like really, I would have to look at statistics to really see like, oh, what is like prevailing there. But they don't have the same sort of government influence as us, and they might, like, even Catholicism might be a bigger thing over there. I would really have to like look into that. But it's just interesting to see these major thoughts and values and influences that really can spread in a way over a society. And that's how a society starts to like, look, and then you'll see, different things happening and different influences coming in to change that. But those roots kind of, those were influential roots. So.
That's true. I like that you bring up some of the other angles that connect with how the country was formed in the first place, because it was not so statistical and logically reasoned out in the early years. It was more from a basis of where we are going to, what are our goals, maybe representing a freedom, religious or biblical context, much more prevalent at that time. And those guided the foundations. And I don't know if they are at the same priority level currently, and does that have a connection with how things have gone? Can be something, because the United States, as compared with many other societies, is fairly young, even though it's been here some 200, 300 years, but other societies may have been here 800, 1,000, or longer than that. And so compared to them, we're like a little experiment in progress versus what we might appear to be, that we are like the representation of everything having been figured out already.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of other influences happening, like as opposed to what you're saying, like maybe when the nuclear family, like that term, kind of originated. And I had to look up what a nuclear family exactly was. So maybe other people are curious too. And basically, that nuclear family term originated around like World War II, and kind of like synonymous with that would be the nucleus. So it's like the core family, which would consist of like the married, right, like the wife, husband, and then maybe there are a few children or how many children, as opposed, and they would be like this like little unit, compared to having all like maybe the aunts and uncles and all these people around, and then they would just go and like live their life in America. And yeah, like there's just like different things around, like our times have changed from some years ago, like things that are influencing our culture today a lot, of maybe why that core families are maybe breaking up more. I don't, like, I would have to see statistics on that as well, really. But I think with all like the positives of like technology, I think technology has kind of been, in ways maybe hurt like the nuclear family structure sometimes, because like you'll even read stuff about, yeah, like you'll read about like the most random things. Like the first thing that pops into my mind is this like random article I came across, and it was of this supermodel and her husband had some sort of connection with somebody on the internet that was giving him attention and maybe he thought was attractive. Meanwhile, he's married to this woman, and in the public eye, it looks like, wow, how could you ever basically consider ideas of other women when you're married to such a beautiful person, both physically, and I think she's probably a wonderful person inside too. And so society was kind of talking about it, like, how could you know, um, this guy just like, how could he even, just neglect that great, like such a great partner. And then and then try to like be influenced and swayed by these other beautiful things. And I think it's sometimes because it's like so in your face, and it's like you're just you literally have to like set boundaries for yourself, especially if you're in a marriage. It's like, okay, what am I looking at? What am I spending time thinking about? Where is my mind going? And if a person isn't actively trying to guard themselves against temptations, then they're gonna kind of be sucked in. And then if they're looking at stuff every single day, these things are forming thoughts in their mind, and then they're just eventually gonna maybe talk to the person online, and then maybe they're gonna meet up, and then eventually maybe they're gonna like it's gonna lead to other things. And how is that good for their family, like his original family. And I think, yeah, technology's definitely been something that has maybe hurt families in many ways. But yeah.
An important point here that came to my mind is dopamine in relation to the current time and the options that people have. There's so many sources of quick dopamine that seem good, and when you get on the dopamine train versus the peace train, you're always seeking the thing because it's a constant what's the thing, and it's kind of frantic, versus the peace train requires you to maybe exit this, relax for a bit, think about yourself and your well-being. You start from a place of well-being, and it's not as exciting at the initial outset because you're looking towards peace and well-being, but soon enough you will not be drawn to every potential item that's showing up on media or wherever it might be, and you'll be okay. You won't be trying to like fill a bucket that's always leaking out all day long
Hmm.
with dopamine.
Right. Yeah. And like, so back to like kind of the individualistic mindset, right? It's like, okay, if you're looking at it from a, a spiritual point of view, you have that accountability. It's like, okay, I'm responsible for my mind, because that's everything, like, right? Everything in life has to do with our thoughts, what we're thinking about, because it leads to like our actions, right? And so if you can have that individualistic mindset of like, um, but if it's not grounded in something, like if it's not grounded in like biblical values and stuff, and like, okay, are my thoughts pleasing to something better, something greater than me, right? And it's like, are my thoughts honoring God? And thoughts would align with his values, right? So it would be like God would want you to be honest, loyal, like all these different things. Like you can look them up. Anyone can look them up. Like, what does God value? And if you read about that every day, then your mind's already going to be set on like, okay, well, how can I go about my day seeking that greater thing, right? Like seeking a mindset, and my thoughts, do they align with this, like with the higher self, with God? And so like if you have grounding, that's one thing. But if you're having an individual oh my gosh, that word, individualistic mindset of like, how can I be pleased? Like, what can please me? And what can I do to get the next dopamine high, or the next, how can I feel good all the time? And what can I just do that's only out of like self, and so like selfish ambition? And if it's all just about like me, instead of like God's values and something greater than me, and looking at the big picture, then it's gonna get dark pretty quickly, because because in that mindset you're literally like, you're you're putting your mind in a vacuum basically, and like you're not going to be able to see anything except for like your selfish desires, and you're not going to be thinking about anyone else. So it doesn't even matter if you don't have a family. It's like, it could be like just any person, but if you are in a family, it's like, okay, how are my actions going to affect my daughter? How are my actions going to affect my son? How are my actions going to affect my husband or wife? And because everyone is affected, like when you you can still be an individual, but it depends on like what kind of like what you're grounding your individualism on, you know?
That's true. You don't want to come from a selfish base. It will be all right for an hour or a day, but very quickly we remember that we were connected from a larger framework. And so a month down the line, a year down the line, we might end up pushing some people away. We might have poor relations. We might give up on certain goals that we would have continued with if we had those people around, but they're not around because we were selfish. And so there's like lost essence in our existence that we can't even see because it's now distant. And why? Because it came from a narrow, more selfish place in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very limiting
Yeah.
factor.
And so many like wonderful things come out of like long term, like
View.
I guess like long term goals or whatnot. Like it's like, oh, like so many things maybe we want to do in the moment, but or is it really worth it? Because like, right, say like to use the analogy of that model and that artist that scenario happened with, it's like, oh, okay, well, like you're building something, you know, like those people are building something together, this like family and all these, they're building a life, but you're going to sacrifice that all for like a little bit of momentary pleasure, you know, it's like, and then all of a sudden you're going to wreck that and that's not going to be a building anymore. You're not going to like that building something is so much like could be much more gratifying in a way, but also yeah, just like how you're affecting so many other people, like that's such a bigger thing than just a momentary thing. So,
Right. There is something nice. I talked about that recently in building items because you get the compounding effect that you can't get when you don't build. Like even with, let's say you're writing articles, you write 2 articles. By the time you get to the third article, you can include a link to your second article, but you couldn't do that once we only had one article. There's something nice about like things building on each other, and then there's a compound effect. But if you never get to building something and you keep destructing it very quickly, you don't get that. You just get a couple things and it's gone, and a couple things and it's gone, and you never get
hmm
what that is. Which, like even like in finances, you know, you put it in, and sometimes 5%, 5%, 5%, and then after 20 years, it's something. You can't get that if you keep taking it out every 4 years. It doesn't have that
hmm
same effect.
right. Yeah, there's like growth and things to see based off of what you've already done.
hmm Which is very cool. I always like that, like things building on one another. Now,
hmm
a counterpoint to this is maybe in the current time, there would be discussion that would say, okay, that's cool and all for 1960, but for today, we don't need to do that. There doesn't need to be a cohesive unit. There can be beeps at all times. Things have changed. Things have changed. And so you can be just a person doing it by themselves somehow. This is a common theme right now. Person just of their own accord. This was not there. This was not there. And I will just handle it of my own accord. Is that a functioning mindset? Do they have a valuable message they are bringing for the current moment?
Are these
What are your thoughts
people
on
with
that?
a family or without a family?
Let's assume they are with a partial family that has debilitation in it, not a full family.
I think ideally, you know, things that are whole are the best, and people who like life isn't perfect and things do happen, but I think people should try their best to make things work, you know, and as much as they can stay in unity and stay as a whole, and that might take years of counseling, or that might take, you know, that might look different for other people, or just like ways for that to happen to stay as like a whole unit, because anything that's broken, it, you know, there's going to be consequences for that. Like it's a anything that's broken, it's going to hurt somebody, whether you think it's you, or whether you don't think it's you, or you don't think it's other people. There's someone in that's being affected, you know? And it can even be people outside your unit. People look at their friends, people look at their colleagues, and they know about their life, you know? And a lot of people are inspired by other people. Like I'm constantly inspired by how other people live their life, or I hear about stories. And like it's amazing when you can hear about someone's story and you know that not everything's perfect. You know the struggles that they're going through, but you also are there for them. You can support them, but you also watch them like fight through it and overcome it and stay in whatever situation they are. If it's a married unit, if it's some sort of situation where you're like dating or like something where you haven't made that commitment, you haven't brought in children into the world and all that stuff. You know, that's it, dating world's definitely different, but yeah, when it comes to like family units, like that's impacting. If you're not fighting for your family unit, then you're not only impacting yourself, your family, but you're impacting all the people around you that are witnessing your family.
That's true. That's kind of like Vanessa Bones was on the show before. Her book is called "You Have More Influence Than You Think." This would be like the extended effects of something. So there's something, and then you think you're only having a slight impact on your close folks, but actually, then there's your extended family. Then there's people in the public watching you. Then there's people who know you from the past, and they're all slightly looking at some angle, like, "Oh, okay, that's what's going on." So you're having these
Mm-hmm.
huge ripple effects from your one unit or how it functions.
Totally. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It passes
The
on.
spider web of connection.
It's the spider web of connection.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
watched a video of a spider making a web about a week ago, and they put in real effort. Okay, they're pulling, and then they move over, and then it's like pull. Okay, next one, and then pull, and then move, and then pull, and attach, and pull. Spiders are putting out. They're making a real thing. That's another type of building something that if they just stopped halfway, you'd be like, oh, there's a random piece of spider silk. But because they stick with it for how long, you get this thing that we can't make. I can't make it.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible,
Yep.
which is cool. Building items. Now, this topic that we're describing has somewhat polarized society. So we have two things. We have a polarization of society where it gets very shocking and but no, some of that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other end, I would say there's a somewhat averaging going on where people are being made similar in a way. So first, the polarization though. What are your thoughts on the shock messages? One will make a great point and get a beep like that sound, and then the other will make a point and they'll put a loud thing on their side, and it's like one of those TV shows a long time ago. We got them, see, like that, and then we got them. It's like a back and forth thoughts on the hefty nature of communication that's not as conversational.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think this is regarding, like, do you have a certain topic in mind of the polarization, or are you speaking very generally about people just really not like agreeing, like having one stance on anything?
Mm-hmm. Is well, for related to, let's say, this one with the family unit, if I put certain individuals in this country on here, and then I brought some other individuals here, this side might represent for how it was more closely as a family unit, and then many other individuals would be very representing of, no, we don't need that, and I have a broken structure, and I'm gonna make it work, and there would be a lot of passion on definitely this side and on this side as well, the separation between those two. And then in public discourse, when there's a video showcasing this kind of comparison, let's say for the family unit, there'll be a lot of, it turns into a person destroyed that side, and it's like a
Mm.
victory instead of like a, hey, can we team
Yeah.
up?
So, would these people, do you think they would already, like, their families maybe are already broken, and so they're talking about their
Yes.
side of things or their standpoint, basically? Like, they're not,
Yes.
you know, they're not people who are in whole families defending people who are in broken families.
Right. And
I see.
so, and like,
So,
yeah, defending their own side, even if there could be
mhm.
a quote better way.
I think I think that would kind of go into the concept of like cognitive dissonance in a way, and just wanting to be at peace with what you're doing in life, right? And like having like feeling aligned in yourself, because if you say you are from a broken family, right, then you're going to you're going to stand on that, you know what I mean? It's going to be like, you're not going to fight yourself, you're not going to you the thing is like, if you want to progress or anything, then you have to kind of like, in a way, own it, right? But I think the best situation for that is to, even if you should all like, anyone can definitely like, should have a positive life-giving mindset about whatever situation they're in. So it's like, okay, like say I'm like a if I'm coming from like a broken standpoint, I'm not going to be like having like all this self-pity and like all these things that are just going to make me depressed and causing me to crawl into a hole and never come out, right? Like that would be super unhealthy, and there's no point in that. Um, so I definitely think like having life-giving thoughts and seeing the light in something that's broken, right? But at the same time, not like not like advocating for brokenness, you know? Not being like, oh, like, yeah, things can work just as well in a broken family as in a whole family. Like, no, they actually like that's sad. Like you should like say what it is, you know? Like if that's really emotionally hard for someone to be like, hey, um, this is a sad thing, then like that person needs to like sit with it and be like, this is a sad thing, and like kind of like grieve with it and accept it, because yeah, you're just kind of calling it for what it is, that it's not a whole unit anymore. And but I think it's the healthiest mindset to acknowledge what's really going on, rather than try to put all these thoughts over something and try to cover it with stuff that's really kind of more in the mindset of denial.
There's a great point you bring up. If you are of something, then you want to work with whatever you had. So you try to make a base from whatever you had. Okay, this is it. There is potential from there. If you started with just this is no good and the other person's is good, that will be very debilitating for some individuals. It won't be motivational because they'll just say, oh, okay, I'm obviously not in the good end. But the follow up to that is what you said. It gets shaky when you have that base that you're trying to build, and then you advocate that yours is also the way to be. Now you're not just trying to work from your end and build something. Now it's almost you're almost wanting to pull the other end to be like yours, which may be broken, and then bringing to that end, well, now you are influencing others to be more broken as well. That suddenly gets into why are you doing that territory, versus if you're doing it for your own build up, that makes more sense.
Yeah. And I think maybe people even are like innocent in that. Like maybe they're in this like, you know, broken situation, and in a way their mindset's also like, if they haven't healed and if they haven't come to those realities, then their mindset's also in a broken state. And so if like a person's talking to someone that hasn't healed yet and is in that broken state from that broken situation, then they should take that into consideration, you know, and be like, hey, like, where is this advice coming from, right? Like, who is this person? It's almost like reading a book, right? It's like, before you read a book, then like check out who the author is, you know, like what mindset, what kind of person is this that's writing this book, and how have they been influenced? Who are their like three biggest influences in life, or what kind of family structure do they come from, or like who are they married to? Do they have kids? And so you kind of get to know that, where that voice and those thoughts are originating from, what's like the hardest thing they've been through, you know? And so when you can understand like how this person's mindset has been formed, then you're going to understand where their message is coming from, and if you should even really like how much, like how much you should really take of their message. Like I think it's smart to, when you're listening to anyone, to have a level of discernment and be like, what are like what is the intentions of the person saying what they're saying, and how accurate are they? Are they, they could be completely biased for whatever. Maybe they have a certain like stance on even like something to do with the school system or for children, right? And maybe they think a certain way, but maybe it's because their child is a certain way, right? And so maybe they're like, they're being influenced in that way, but maybe it's not for the benefit of everybody. And maybe it's not, um, maybe it really doesn't even logically make sense, but they're trying to push their thoughts like it's true and like it's really the benefit of everybody. And they're, in a way, trying to influence people, but not in a good way, but almost brainwashing, And it's like, okay, like always considering different points of view on things, I think helps you as an individual come to a good standing on like, how do you individually feel about something rather than just jumping on someone's bandwagon and, just because it sounds one way or it could even sound good, but really is that all that's going on? So
That's true. It's not just about something sounding good, and it's important for us to go to the source of where something is coming from. Like you said, maybe looking at three people that person looks up to would tell you a bit about what direction they would want things to go. And I thought of a metaphor somewhat. Let's say somebody was driving their car and they got car damage on their car, and now let's say those two cars now have car damage, but they agree. They say, look, we're going to drive around, and anybody that comments on our car damage, we're going to say, this is the new cool thing. Car damage is what we want all cars to have on them. And then anybody that shows up with a undamaged car, you start saying, this is no longer good, guys. That used to be good 40 years ago, but this is the new cool thing. Then everybody starts to have damaged cars, which could look cool for a day, a month. It'd be kind of funny, actually, this visual. But after a period of time, maybe there would be more like tire falls off or collision or brakes don't work or something. There's a shaky after effect of taking breakdown and making it socially, let's say, cool for a period of time, because there were reasons that a fully functional vehicle was useful and looked at in a positive way in the first place. We don't want to discount that.
right, that's such a interesting analogy. I really like that. Such a great point you make, because like if we look at like what do all humans really want, and more than wholeness or more than brokenness. It's funny because that actually proves a point. It's like you want human connection. So if like all those people are showing up with these damaged cars and you roll in with your beautiful, perfected shiny car, and they tell you you're wrong, even though you're whole, it's going to take a lot for you to stand firm and be strong in that, because you're going to be missing out on community. You're going to be missing out on that emotional support. Like you're going to be missing out on that human connection, and that's your deepest desire. Like anybody, it's our deepest desire to really connect with people. But if you're a lone soldier, like you're going to have to be really strong until you can basically share what it is to have something that's whole. And you take a risk in like in maybe being lonely for a while, and maybe being rejected, and people just being like, you're not cool because you're not trendy, you don't look like us, right? You're all shiny, but we have these like cool dents and stuff, and we're gonna own it because we're broken, but we like have community in it, and they all have this emotional support and they feel connected. But really, when you see what's going on, it's like, it's sad, because it's like all these people are just, you know, they if they want to get help and be better, they can, but it's really just sad for that. It's sad on both parts, because that soldier, the guy with the shiny car, he sees what's going on. He sees that he's whole. He sees that there's truth, but yet he's surrounded by people who have like completely been brainwashed, and not completely just brainwashed, but just really hurt, and so, and like there's compassion for that, but at the same time it's like you just never it's almost better to remain whole. It's always better to remain whole, even if you have to be lonely for a little bit, because there will be people who will support you. There will be other people eventually who will show up with that shiny car, right? And it might just not be like, it might be a little bit of a hard journey, but at some point, at least you're not compromising yourself, right? Because it would be really crazy if you end up being like, you know what, damage my car, right? Let me be just like all of you. And then a week later, one of those damaged cars gets this like revelation. Maybe it's God speaks to them, gets this revelation. They come out of it, and maybe they become the soldier. And then you're kind of like, wait, you see somebody else taking the lead, right? And you're like, wait, that was me, but I compromised myself, if that were to happen, then you would always wish that you would have stayed strong.
That's a good representation. Like, that was me. Wait a minute, what did I threw that away? Multiple things come to mind here. One of them is I think of it like swinging from a branch. If there's two branches, when you're on a branch and it's stable, and then you have to swing from a branch for a moment, you're in the air with nothing. That would be like the lone soldier period, until you land on another branch, and now you're back to stability again. So you have to go through that period to swing. In this metaphor, they're too far apart to be holding both at the same time. You have to actually swing in the air in that metaphor. And then on compassion,
it's a moment. It's like you'll have moments of vulnerability, but you have to like be okay with it,
Right. And then compassion and connection, I have two links to this. One is connection. I've seen many data sets coming out in the last 2 months, definitely, where of the items that affect your long-term health, reducing alcohol usage, reducing smoking. Smoking is pretty substantial, and then exercise, and then diet are key there. But the highest one on any ranking is network or close connections, and especially, obviously, this is very important for the oldest individuals, but across the board, health is connected to, am I part of a grouping? Is there somebody there with me, for me in some way? And then as far as compassion, I have a story. A couple days ago, there was an event. The person I met named Joseph was introverted. I reached out because I'm super social, and he was glad. And then he said his most important thing that he connects with in people is compassion, even though he doesn't really reach out. So I tried to bring out his inner self and bring out his interest in reaching out to people. I told him sometimes the individuals that don't speak up are the ones that people want to hear from. What are your thoughts on that matter? That it's inverted in life. Sometimes the individuals, they're like, me, I'm on stage, please, please, please. People are like, we're done with you. And then the person that's like very careful with what they're saying, and I don't know if I should say that because of the effects and stuff, they really should be on stage. It's backwards. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think maybe like there's definitely like people who do have loud voices, and really quick, actually, I'm going to backtrack just slightly, because
I brought
you
up
make
multiple things.
two really great points. It's like I felt like the first point was about relating maybe drugs and alcohol, to connecting, kind of, yeah, like it's like linked to whether you have a community or not. It's like, were you saying like people who have a community are less likely to use alcohol and drugs, or?
Well, I think that's true too. I almost want to agree with that statement too. Let me process. Wait, there is definitely people that they come together using alcohol and drugs, but it's not beneficial in the long term. I don't think those work well. That's a good category. I kind of want to explore that. But on this one, it was separate. I definitely think there's groups that come together on kind of like we said, broken stuff. Like, oh, you use this substance that's not good for you. I also use this substance that's not good for me, and they link on that, but it's a short term thing. But on this one, it was saying things that affect you in the long term was, let's say, diet, exercise, and alcohol was larger. Smoking was really large, and then network was way up here as far as direct health impact. So it was picking out each one and how much they affect you in the long term, and having a close network was more important to how long you will live than even if you quit smoking. So it'd be better to have close connections than
Oh,
even
I
quit
see.
smoking
You're saying like
if so.
how impactful it is to have community.
But I would say there are definitely a huge source of communities is not just the good. There are also the I do terrible thing, you do terrible thing. We do terrible thing together and don't feel as bad.
Okay, so it's like emotional support helps someone like live a longer life, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, just because we're like people, everybody just wants to connect, and like when you feel, connected, it's like the best. So, but
Part of something bigger too.
yeah. And then, oh, but you were also saying you went into that point of people who kind of are on platforms and they have a lot to say, but their stuff may not really be benefiting society. But then people maybe who don't come out and don't have really huge platforms are a bit more reserved and they don't say as much. But really, maybe those people could have things that would like great thoughts or like things that could benefit society, not things that wouldn't really like degenerate society in a way, but yet they don't express themselves as much as the
Right.
people who are just saying whatever. Yeah, I think it is like it's a funny concept because certain things also get pushed more. It's like, you look at the news or you look at whatever, and it's sometimes like negative things that get pushed. Like people are sometimes attracted to just to things that aren't necessarily wholesome or just wonderful, but they're sometimes attracted to things that are maybe broken or even have like kind of bad messages. Who knows? So I think maybe people already have a tendency to follow something that's just kind of like nonsensical or whatnot. Um, but on the other hand, yeah, I mean, I think it'd be amazing if more people who had things to offer society, like people who had like great thoughts or just things that are going to uplift others, if they, had more of a platform and put themselves out there a little bit more, because I'm sure they could affect groups of people and be inspiring to groups of people. I think of even like, I think of certain people I even follow on social media. Not like so closely, but I know that they have a presence and like I'll like, look at their stuff every so often and I'm always inspired. Or, I always feel like I'll like go through my day and I'll just like click on they like, on Instagram or whatever and they've posted something either on their story or on their feed and I just feel like a sense of relief. I'm like, whew, like I'm just so happy they exist, like they like make my day, like, and they're positive words or like some sort of like affirmation they're just sending out. um it really just it like I feel it's interesting how you really do connect with these different personalities online that are online, but you don't really know these people in person. You don't have, but you still have that connection to it. I mean, I think it could even be like a TV show. It's like, oh, you watch a television show and, um, you know, you wait for that next season or you wait for the next episode and you're connected to it and you get connected to these characters even if they're acting, because see something you see something in them that you see in yourself, and um, And I think that's really great when it's like when it's a positive influence. So I think it's would be fabulous, you know, for people who have these voices that offer positivity or just like thought, you know, that just evoke thoughts that are beneficial for people and for people's growth and mindset and whatever it is, rather than anything that's going to spread people who have messages that are going to hurt people, you know, or just things where they're just, I don't know, just making people more polarized or just spreading like these things that are just bringing people down. Like, I don't know, I think we always have a choice of who we follow. We always, it's crazy because it's like we are the ones who make people famous, you know? If everybody started ignoring someone that had this bad message that they were spreading, um they wouldn't be famous anymore, really. I mean, paparazzi could still take their photo and whatnot, and they could still do whatever. But if you know, if people start being like, no, like we don't like that, like that message is not really helping society, like those people will disappear, you know, out of the public influence, you know. So society does have a role to play in it of who we make a thing or if we don't. So
I have described similar, but I don't think on the program, but I have thought similar and definitely mentioned it to some individuals that, let's say the world was full of John, then certain things don't exist. So let's say the world was full of Ashley. Maybe McDonald's doesn't exist, but McDonald's is kept going by some number of people. Same thing with some large name figure. If not for, 80,000 people that have some similarities to that individual, they wouldn't have their large platform that keeps building and growing and seems to be unstoppable. It's only continuously building because it represents something that exists in many other individuals that are helping to like hold it up like this.
mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
It's being held up in a way.
Yeah, for sure. And it's cool though, because it's like, okay, like, yeah, you take any person that has some sort of influence and you do start to like associate them with what do they represent, you know? Um, and like that's kind of cool though, in a way. It's like because everyone at the end of the day represents like their message. And like the first person that comes to my mind is just because she's like going on tour right now is like Taylor Swift, right? And so like people resonate with her message of like broken relationships, heartbreak, you know, just her songs. And so like when you think of Taylor Swift, it's like you think of, you know, her love songs in a way. And or you think of like it's so funny because I like maybe people perceive people differently too, but sometimes when I think of certain other figures, I think of maybe the body parts that they represent. Isn't that funny? Like if people are into like, you know, it's so funny like butt implants or something. It's like, oh, they represent that. And like that's like partly what they're famous for. It's almost just funny. It's just like how people and then people will follow certain people for these reasons because I don't know, it's sometimes it's funny what people represent, you know. But
That's
everyone
true.
kind of does. It's like however you put yourself out there is really it's more like probably really successful people if they stay consistent with their message, and the only way to really stay consistent is for it to be something that's very true to that person. It's sincere, you know. If glitz and glam is your everything and all, um like that's going to be your message because like you're just all about that life, you know, which is them, you know. Or if you're all about like preaching, like you're known as like a pastor, then you're going to be like you're representing God, you know. Or whatever it is, it's like sometimes I feel like that can just naturally happen if you start putting yourself out there. What you represent just starts like it it's like you don't even try it, you know. It's like it just people just know what you represent based off of like what naturally comes out of you. So
You can't help but be you. which is why it's beneficial. Then you showcase yourself, and then even I've said this, that even if I try to copy another person, I might do some similar stuff they're doing, but it's still gonna come across as me copying them. It won't look like two of
Mm,
them. I just can't copy them. It's impossible. If I did almost everything they do all day long the same way at the same time, still it's gonna be like me copying them, and still I'd be my own thing. They'd still be, oh, that guy, but he's copying them. We'd still be separate. I can't be a second that person.
yeah, totally. Right. And like, but it's, you're at such peace when you can just relax and talk from a place of honesty, because then you don't have to like, you don't have to overthink anything. You know, you don't have to try to come up with what somebody would say, or you're not always thinking about someone else, or like what, how to try to be like some. You're literally just like, who am I? How do I feel? And from considering all these things in life, like, what is my stance on something? You know, and it's like that's, you're gonna be like, anyone is the happiest version of themselves is when they're the most sincere. Who likes to be fake? That's not fun. Trying to like something that you don't is such a waste of time, and it's like not fun. If I have a, you know, if I like chocolate and I'm drinking like some weird shamrock shake all day, but I like really want the chocolate shake, I'm gonna be miserable at the end of the day. But just because like, I don't even know why people would be. I don't even think there are a lot of, you can't sustain insincerity. You can't. Like it just becomes, you probably just get too annoyed with yourself. You know? Like that's like
It'll like eat at you. Yeah, you wanted to get a hot chocolate, but you actually got a kombucha or some chia seed thing. Now you're like,
Mhm.
why am I drinking this chia seed thing? There
Yeah.
could have been a hot chocolate here. I'm disappointed.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, like, it's the opposite of what humans desire the most. If humans desire connection, and if
Right.
you're, and insincerity is like the opposite of connection. It's like neglecting,
That's a good
it's
point.
neglecting connection. If I want chocolate, you know, I'm connecting with myself. I'm like, okay, I have some chocolate. But if I do something that I don't want, like at all, and I'm like pretending I want that, that's like self sabotage or something. I don't know. Maybe that's
That's a
not the right
great
word, but
point.
it's like doesn't make sense.
It's going away from that number one category that's important for well-being for a person. That's a great point. You're like countering the most important. It's like if someone for the second one was not smoking and they started smoking, that would be the negative that would reduce this one. And then the same thing on the connection one. It's like instead of building connection, starting to showcase yourself in a fake way. Now you're just gonna start pushing. It's basically the destruction of the connection building item.
Yeah, exactly. It's yeah, it's not productive at all. So,
And also to follow up on that Taylor Swift item you brought up, what they represent is what they're known for. The first default thing you had of Taylor Swift there was her relationships not working out is a big part of her theme. And so you could say a good chunk of the audience for the shows that will go there can relate in some way to things not working out. There's not going to be as much of a percentage of people where things have worked out great because the identification with the theme won't be as strong. I'm not saying they won't be there, but I guarantee that the percentages are much lower than with someone else who represents things working out. Then it would be more of a fitting audience member.
right, yeah. One thought that just popped into my mind is I wonder if she'll come out with songs ever. Maybe she already has, I don't know, but will she come out with songs of like successful relationships, you know?
That would that would,
Like, or songs of like how to, what people can do to have a successful relationship and the values people should have to try to forgive their exes, you know? Like, how many songs does she have about forgiveness, right? Isn't it all like, it's all about kind of like, I'll hear an interview and it'll be kind of like, it'll be something like the interviewer will ask her, so, um, you know, you make a lot of songs about your ex-boyfriends who like did you wrong, and like how do you think about that, you know? And she said something like oh well, they should have treated me better, you know, that's their problem. And like it's her writing her songs is almost like revenge, right? And so like, but where is the compassion in that, right? Like where is the forgiveness? And like, and then why are all the people jumping on the her bandwagon? Where is the bigger person in that message, right? What are we like by following Taylor Swift? Like, not that there's, you know, everybody has their reasons, but it's like, ask yourself, like, why am I following Taylor Swift? She's just my example. You know what I mean? It's like, but just like from a personal point of view, right? It's like, why do I look up to anybody in society? And do they deserve that pedestal?
That's a great point. On the last one here, I'm going to include a final towards one category. What would be a message you have about people and connection building? What might be a message you would want to tell people about connection that could help them build it in some form with maybe one person or more around them?
One thing about connecting with people?
Connection or connection building that might be a cool thought or inspire somebody.
I think just like being open to spend time with a person, you know. That probably sounds incredibly simple, but
We are simple creatures.
it's like amazing actually, like when someone really puts in that effort to just like spend in-person time with someone. And it's like, especially if it's somebody new, you know, if it's like a new friend, just be like, hey, like, let's go get coffee, let's go get lunch, let's go do this fun thing together, let's go to the bookshop, or like anything where you're just like spending time. You don't always have to talk to the person, but letting like you'll find connections here and there. And yeah, like always asking questions and like getting to know a person, but giving the opportunity really to connect and not giving up too soon, but really but putting that effort to be with that person. And I think that can come in a lot of ways, like say, because we're like on the subject of broken relationships too. It's like, okay, well, where is that brokenness, and how can I be the bigger person in that broken relationship? Like, let me humble myself, right? And be like, I'm like, maybe I can reach out to that person. Like maybe I'm a child, right? And maybe I have a parent who I haven't talked to in a while, and maybe I have an expectation like that parent should reach out to me. Maybe I'm in my, you know, whatever age it could be. And instead of having this expectation like your parent should reach out to you, but instead like being like, you know what, I'm going to reach out to my parent because my parent's also just a human being. And maybe they're going through something. Maybe they have stuff to heal from. And so, like, let me just spend some time with them. And I don't know how it's going to go. Like, maybe it's going to be awkward, um, whatever the case may be. But just like that effort and like just being like around them and just being present, I think would mean a lot. And it's just like the start of healing, you know, healing whatever's broken in that relationship.
This is a great point. That effort makes all the difference, and the other person recognizes it immediately. And usually, the person that was more, let's say, of the rougher of the two, the other person is more than ready for that connection to happen. So it's not like they're gonna say, "Oh, you messed things up." They're usually likely to help it along. Glad that you did put in that effort. That's a valuable point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like especially in like a family dynamic, like it's special. It's like, you know, you only get you only get the parents that you have, or if you're a parent, you only have the children that you do. And so they're always like, effort should never run out, you know? Like, no one should ever give up on that. Like, you can always keep extending the olive branch, you know? You can always fight. Like, it's just, you just can't give up.
That's a super point. That's the right golden quote right there. Effort should never run out. Wonderful. Mm-hmm. Rebecca Faith Lawson, I would like to thank you for having joined on this wonderful episode of the show, discussion about some topics including family units, polarization, the averaging of society, nuclear family structure compared to other countries, connection, and a variety of other topics. Very glad to have you on.
Yay. Here. Well, thank you so much, Armin. It was so fun. Sal, great talking with you.
Same with you. And we are out.